Okay, welcome everybody and good morning. Thanks for joining us on the webinar today. We'll get kicked off. My name's Dan. I look after marketing for our B2B products here at BenQ Australia. And today I've got Jai with me as well. He's the FAE and head trainer at BenQ Australia. Just a little disclaimer to start with that the webinar is being recorded for future use. So in the Q&A, if you don't want us to read out your question, just let us know and we'll catch up with you after the session. Also, don't forget to stay on the line after the webinar for a post-webinar survey where you can, we'll choose one lucky winner to receive a BenQ screen bar reading lamp. That'll pop up at the end in your browser, and you just got to fill that one out if you would like to. So thank you for joining us today at the Healthy Approach to Collaboration webinar. Healthcare really continues to be a very important and integral part of BenQ's business philosophy, with the first eye care features being implemented in 2015 on our premium IFP models. Since then, the adaptation of new and improved methods of healthcare have seen the addition of more eye care features, germ-resistant screen, and advanced air quality sensors. In 2020, we've implemented the third generation of ClassroomCare and healthcare technology, which we'll go into in more depth today in this webinar. All right, so agenda for today. We'll have a little look at the RPO2 interactive flat panel and the CP series and how the germ-resistant feature works on those particular models. We're going to go into how do silver nanoparticles kill germs, more about BenQ's germ-resistant screen certification, the germ-resistant screen manufacturing process and the reliability, some testing reports, and then finally we'll go through a demo of the brand new RPO2 series of interactive flat panel. So we're all quite well aware of the disruption that's occurred on analog modes of advertising, presentation and collaboration when we're talking about traditional whiteboards, printed menus and maps and posters being replaced with touch technology in interactive flat panels, digital billboards, digital signage, and digital wayfinders, something similar to what you can see there in the slide. These are very high traffic areas and they're used by a lot of people, sometimes hundreds, sometimes thousands in places like shopping centers. What are the risks of using these types of technology and how can BenQ help to mitigate them? So BenQ is the first brand to feature germ-resistant screen technology on our interactive flat panels. Since 2016, when the first certification came on board from TUV, a little bit more about that later, but the third generation of germ-resistant technology has been implemented on our newest range of panels. So the CP series or the Duo board and the RPO2 series. So let's understand a little bit more about silver nanoparticles and how they kill germs. Firstly, we need to understand what are germs? What are we actually talking about? So when we're talking about germs, we classify them into three major groups. So first of all, we've got viruses, the smallest of that group. We've got bacteria, and then the largest particle size, fungi. So what are silver ions? So silver ions have been demonstrated in a various number of medical literature to be effective against bacteria, some viruses, influenza, and even types of fungi as well. So how do those silver nanoparticles actually work? So silver nanoparticles firstly release silver ions, or Ag+. The silver ions then are absorbed by the bacteria cell, and then as a result, it inhibits the cell division and replication of that bacteria cell, and then therefore helping to eliminate the cell division and also the buildup of that particular bacteria on the surface. So let's talk about some of the applications where silver ions are being used in everyday products. So we've got a small list here: surgical masks, water filters, bandages, and a lot of medical devices are utilizing silver ions in their applications today. So the most popular industry for silver applications is the health and fitness and cleaning. And as you can see, only a very small, under 5%, are utilized in electronic devices. But this is growing on a day-to-day or a year-to-year basis, especially considering the current climate. So we're talking about validation for silver application. So there's been several international accreditation given to the application of silver and the effectiveness of silver. These include international organizations like the FDA and EPA based in the US, and some very highly regarded Japanese and Korean based organizations and others around the world as well. So as you can see from this graph, since 2007, the yearly number of patents being registered for antibacterial silver applications is growing quite steadily. And it's no more important now than ever again in this current climate. So let's talk now about specifically the BenQ germ-resistant screens. So the competitive advantages, the manufacturing process, and a little bit about the evolution of that technology. So BenQ incorporates a silver nanoparticle into the anti-glare coating of our IFP screens, and then they're cured together to form one single layer. So down the bottom of that slide there, we've got the competitive advantages. So like I mentioned before, we're the first in the world to implement a germ-resistant screen into our IFPs. We've got double certification, including validated human safety, which we'll talk about a little bit more about later. The implementation of silver ions, a high temperature curation process, and abrasion resistant technology as well. So as I mentioned earlier, the third generation of germ-resistant screen is a little bit different to the previous generations. So in that the silver nanoparticles and the anti-glare coating are cured together at more than 400 degrees to create one consolidated layer over the glass. So this helps with the efficacy and the durability of that screen. So the evolution of BenQ germ-resistant screen started back in 2016 when the first certification came on board. That featured a 2-layer coating. As we go along all the way up until 2020, we've got consolidation of a 1-layer coating, as well as a higher durability, a better reliability, and a lifespan more than 5 years, and a screen capacity of over 1 million touches in a single point. So not all nano silver coatings are created equally. There's plenty of different applications and the way of coating a particular surface, starting from a spray coating all the way up into low temp and then a high temp coating. So the differences there is the life cycle or the endurance of that product. So a spray coating will last 1 to 2 days, and then something that is utilized by the BenQ germ-resistant screens is the high temp coating. So above 400 degrees, the curation process allows for over 5 years of duration of that active nano silver coating. So let's talk about the validation process that we've gone through. So the first and foremost is the certification from TUV Rheinland, which is a very large and highly regarded testing and certification lab based in Germany. And they test the antibacterial activity and efficacy of the BenQ screens. So they've tested BenQ technology for two main bacteria that is quite evident in a lot of different situations. One being E. coli and the other being Staphylococcus. So these two bacteria are quite prevalent in the classroom, at home, at the office, or wherever you may be, and can cause several different types of infections to the human body. When they're measuring the samples on the BenQ screen, they've achieved that by testing a control specimen after 24 hours of an incubation period. In addition to this, in 2019, we achieved the SIAA certification. SIAA is a highly regarded Japanese certification board, and they test for the efficacy, but also, more importantly, the safety standards and the human health implications of any types of technology. So essentially, they're testing and certifying the human safety element of these products. So whenever implementing the IFPs into a classroom or a meeting room or wherever you may need a collaboration device, making sure that the people using the technology are kept safe while also eliminating the bacteria on the screen as well. So we've got a couple of different test reports from our manufacturing process. So when we're talking about the chemical that we're using, namely the silver ion coating, we utilize Dow Chemical reagents. And Dow Chemicals are one of the most respectable and largest chemical brands in the world. And you can see down the bottom, they have a quite prestigious customer portfolio, including Apple, Procter & Gamble, and Unilever. So just because the BenQ IFPs have a germ-resistant coating and it helps to protect you from the bacteria buildup, they also do still need to be cleaned. So when we're talking about cleaning the product, it's very important that we use the right devices and the right cleaning equipment to make sure that the silver ionic coating is maintained for the longest period of time. So when we're cleaning, we're never using paper towels, never spraying directly onto the screen, never using moistened cloths or any kind of harsh chemicals. So essentially, best way to clean it is to use a lint-free cloth and a bottle of 70% isopropyl alcohol and wiping down the screen after heavy use. So if we're talking a bit more about the reliability or the durability of the screen, we've gone through several tests to test the abrasion on the screen itself. So 10,000 strokes of a brush at 500 grams, 3,000 strokes of an eraser at 500 grams, and probably the most effective 5,000 back and forth cycles of 1,000 grams of something like a steel wool, which can be traditionally very, very abrasive. So you might be able to see in the picture there the before and after the abrasion test. So it's not adding any kind of abrasion or scratching to the screen. Also something to note as well, the screens have been tested under very high temperature and humidity conditions, so namely 60 degrees Celsius and 85% humidity or above for a 48-hour period. So as we all know, those extreme temperatures should never occur in a classroom or a meeting room, but it's nice to know that it has been tested up to those particular numbers. Another test that was conducted was a simple free fall test. So essentially a 1 kilo steel ball was dropped from a 1 meter height onto a sample of the glass or the screen right into the center. And as you can imagine, it did withstand that, and there was no cracking or breaking that occurred. So when we're talking about durability in the classroom or the meeting room, if anything does happen to hit the screen or any kind of projectile thrown at it, it should withstand a high level of impact. All right, I've breezed through that quite quickly there, Jai, so I might hand over to you to do the RPO2 demo.
No worries, thanks, Dan. So guys, we're just gonna have a quick recap on the RPO2 series. This has been out for a few months now, but we thought we'd take this opportunity just as a refresher and to point out some of the really great improvements we've made since the RPO1. So you can see on this title screen here that we obviously have the three sizes of the RPO2, 65, 75, and 86-inch models. And this is just a great overview of sort of the improvements we've made. And Dan touched on a lot of these during his presentation about the healthcare side of things. And a couple to focus on here. Down the bottom of the screen, you can see the AQ sensor upgrade. So previously in the RPO1 model, we did have the CO2 sensor built into that panel with the little widget that appears on the desktop. And we've increased the amount of sensors there and the variety of sensors. So you can see there certain things like particle matter, humidity, and temperature sensors. And we'll get into why BenQ has included those sensors into this model. But we'll cover all these kind of features as we progress. So let's have a look at it now. So the first big one that we improved from the RPO1 series was we were running a previous version of Android, which was Android 6 on the RPO1. And because of that version of Android, it was limited to displaying in full HD. With the RPO2, we're now utilizing Android 8.0 or Android Oreo, and that allows us to take advantage of 4K resolution on the Android system. So the desktop is different. It's a much better resolution compared to the previous model there. So that's the first change. The other change we made was improving the actual touch technology on our panels. The RPO1 used technology known as Fine IR technology, and now we're using Fine Plus IR technology or Fine IR Plus technology. And what this has allowed us to do is create a panel that's faster to write on. So the touch distance is shorter. We can write smaller because the panel's more accurate, and we can actually make that bezel thinner by about 26% compared to the RPO1 model. And the way we were able to do this was eliminate the air gap between the glass panel of the screen and the actual touch panel itself. And that gap obviously improves all those things I just mentioned straight away. Moving along, we've also improved our microphone array. So in the previous model, the RPO1, we had 4 microphones and they were built into the side bezels, 2 microphones either side there. Now you can see in the image there that we now have a microphone array which incorporates 8 different microphones, and they're just built into the base of the soundbar underneath that PIR sensor. So it's better audio quality as far as recording your voice or sending your voice over VC, and incorporates noise cancellation and speech enhancement features as well. And then we've improved the audio output experience as well. So BenQ is renowned for that forward-facing or front-facing soundbar that we include on the majority of our models. And so we still have 2 16-watt speakers like we did in the RPO1, but now we have added a subwoofer and an equalizer to that as well. So we have 2 16-watt speakers and a 15-watt subwoofer built into the panel. And because it's front-facing, the audio is going exactly where you need it, out into to the rest of the participants in that meeting space or in that classroom. And then one of the big features, and I can't stress this enough, and even though it's a small aesthetic and technical change, it makes a world of difference, particularly in that classroom or in that meeting space. So we'll start from the left-hand side that you can see in the image, and that incorporates our passive infrared sensor or our PIR sensor. And what these sensors do is detect movement within that space where the panel is, and it will activate that flicker-free and that low blue light technology. The short-range PIR sensors are on the left-hand side and the right-hand side of the soundbar, and they detect motion within a 3-meter range there. We've also upgraded or included front-facing ports. So on our RPO1 model, we just had a couple of USB ports in the front that allowed you to plug in portable hard drives or USB drives to access your files with ease. Now we've obviously included those again, so we still have a front USB 3 and a USB 2 port, conventional USB-A ports, but we've included a HDMI and a touch port in the front there, which allows you to plug in your conventional laptops and have touch control there if you're using Windows or Mac. But the big thing, or the big change that we've made, is including a USB Type-C port as well. And this is a one cable solution, and we'll have a look at that in a moment. So USB Type-C, what does this do? It allows us to transmit display so we can see what's going on from our device. Incorporates audio as well. It carries touch capability too. So if you plug in a Windows laptop, for instance, via USB-C, we can transmit the picture, the audio, and the touch with that one cable. And depending on the device that we plug in, it's also capable of charging. So it's a 10-watt output on that USB Type-C. So for smaller devices like mobile phones or tablets, we're able to charge those from that port. And depending on the laptop, it may carry a charge through to that. For instance, we tested it on a 12-inch MacBook and it was charging that device too. So it is device dependent. Obviously on larger laptops, it won't have the capability to charge those, but for those smaller devices, we can keep those going via that one cable. So it's a really versatile port, and it just improves the flexibility of being able to connect your devices to that IFP. I touched on this before. So in the center there, we also have another PIR sensor, but this one's a long-range PIR sensor. So this will detect people up to 5 meters away there and activate that low blue light and flicker-free technology. And then I spoke about the microphone array before too. So 8 microphones built into that array now, and we have speech enhancement and noise cancellation technology. This next slide is just a good overview of how BenQ has advanced with ClassroomCare or healthcare technology with our panels. And you can see that this all started way back in 2012 with the flicker-free technology and progressed through the low blue light, 4K displays and anti-glare. And those fall down the bottom from 2012 to 2015 are kind of industry standards now. We expect those from an interactive flat panel, regardless of the manufacturer. You'll see in 2017, that's when we first incorporated that germ-resistant screen, that nano ionic silver coating that Dan went through earlier today. And you'll notice at the top of this chart, in 2019 and 2020, we've constantly improved that germ-resistant screen, going through a second and now into a third generation germ-resistant screen on our RPO2 models. And this has increased durability and reliability of that coating. So let's have a look at ClassroomCare or healthcare. I mentioned before that on our previous model, our RPO1, we had that CO2 sensor built in, the little widget there that you can see on the left-hand side of the screen. But we've also incorporated some more sensors there, including temperature and humidity and particle matter. And we're actually able to view these sensors with an update that's coming to DMS, which will be DMS 2.0. And so this is great for our IT guys to have a look into that and see what's going on as far as thermal control and comfort within that classroom or that meeting space goes. The reason we've done that, I'll just take a step backwards for a second. The reason we've included those sensors is because they've done studies, particularly in education, where students have deemed the classroom more comfortable as far as thermal comfort goes and temperature. They've actually had better results when under examination conditions. So there is a purpose for including those sensors based on real studies and real research into those kind of circumstances. Obviously, we'd be amiss not to mention low blue light and macular degeneration. So I mentioned before that this is kind of industry standard now, but it is an ongoing concern. We as humans spend a lot of time staring at screens these days, and it starts from a very, very young age. And so incorporating low blue light technology, and we do this not only in our IFPs, but in our monitors as well, it's really important to make sure that we limit any exposure to that kind of harmful technology. So low blue light is an industry standard now. It's really important that for any screen you're looking at that incorporates that technology. And then this is just a quick recap on sort of what we've spoken about today. And you'll see these red points below the panel there. They're kind of the improvements that we've made from our previous panel. So you'll notice in the gray there on the left-hand side, these are all kind of features and assets that we've had with our previous model, with the RPO1, but we've improved a lot of that technology. A lot of it is hardware-based as well that you can see there. So just to recap, our Find Plus IR touch technology, we have a much smoother annotation experience now. You can write faster, you can write more accurately, and it's a slimmer bezel as well on an RPO2. One of the big ones, and I can't stress this enough, are those front-facing I/O ports there, including that USB Type-C port, which is going to become more of a request and more of a requirement for people going forward. It is a port that will eventually replace HDMI or mini display port or VGA, because it does all of those things, like carrying across your display information, audio, touch, and the ability to charge certain devices too. And then we've made an improvement to our ClassroomCare technology with that 3rd generation germ-resistant screen, which is really interesting technology that Dan went through earlier today. And so far as we're aware, particularly as far as releases in the market go, we're still the only panel IFP manufacturer that utilizes germ-resistant screens. And then I mentioned, as far as video conferencing goes there, which is obviously a hot topic at the moment too, sort of battling and coping with this pandemic, a lot of teachers are utilizing video conferencing, and a lot of organizations are relying more heavily on video conferencing now more than ever, with people displaced from their offices or working out in the field. And so having a good microphone array built into that panel for those that are in the office and are corresponding with those people outside, or for teachers that are teaching students remotely, it is really good to know that you have a good quality microphone built into that panel. And then with the PIR sensors as well, we had this technology in our previous model, but we've enhanced that now with 3 sensors ranging from 3 to 5 meters there to activate that low blue light and that flicker-free technology. And then that's, as far as a recap goes, it's a really brief recap, but we've just touched on the really important points there that we've improved since our last model there with the RPO1. But we might head into some Q&A now.
And I know we've gone through it quite quickly today, Jai, so there was a lot of some heavy information we put across. So hopefully, if anyone's got any questions now, please send them through in the chat there, and we're happy to answer them for you. I know you touched on a lot about the USB and the front-facing ports. I mean, this is one of the biggest improvements hardware-wise that we're making based on the new panel. So in a classroom environment, in a meeting room environment, it just gives so much more access to different types of devices, whether it be students coming up to the front of the class and needing to plug in a device. And you mentioned yesterday on yesterday's webinar about integrators having to run conduit lines and stuff like that, maybe wall adapters, or bringing the ports from around the back of the panel to the front. I mean, there's a lot of work involved in that. Yeah,
we've essentially taken that notion and incorporated that same wall panel into the front of the soundbar there. So it's ease of access, essentially. A lot of the feedback we get from teachers revolves around making things simple and it being a really easy and efficient process. And so we wanted to do that as far as connecting external devices. They don't want to be searching around the back of the panel or the bottom of the panel looking for a port to plug their devices into. And that's why a lot of schools, as you mentioned, Dan, have used connected cables already to the rear of that machine and install conduits and run those to wall panels. And the problem with that design, I mean, it's great design. The problem is if something goes wrong with one of those cables, it's really hard to sort of diagnose what's going wrong with that. The other thing too is that you're kind of anchored to where that panel is. And so I know a lot of schools do wall mount their panels, but if you wanted to have a floating panel on a trolley, it kind of limits the access to that. And having those front-facing ports, it just eliminates that need to really go searching for how to connect your device, makes it really easy. So in situations like libraries or halls, or if we're in the corporate space, just being able to transport a panel from different meeting rooms and having that front-facing connectivity really leads to being a more efficient and just a better approach to connecting your devices manually.
Exactly. And with obviously the main reason for this webinar today is talking about healthcare and the improvements in our classroom care, as well as healthcare benefits and implementations. So we're talking about the 3rd generation of the germ-resistant screen. It's interesting to see the consolidation of the layers. So rather than having layer upon layer, so a silver ion layer, then a tempered glass layer, and then all being separate, we've got that all in the one. Also, I suppose, making it lighter as well, and consolidating it in that way, as well as the longevity or the lifespan of that effectiveness that the silver ion will have. So 5 years plus.
Yeah, and it makes sense. I mean, it ties in with sort of warranties, particularly in education, right? A lot of schools will insist on a 5-year warranty. And so you know that coating is going to last for the length of that warranty as well, which is really important. You wouldn't want a coating like that to only last for a couple of years of the lifespan of that panel. It doesn't make any sense to manufacture or incorporate something like that. But yeah, I mean, it was a couple of years ago, like I mentioned, it was 2017 when the first panels came out from us with that germ-resistant coating. And it kind of seemed like a novelty to a lot of people that we were sort of grasping at straws. But there's obviously real science behind that. But even going further than that, just dealing with this pandemic, there's been a real focus on health and hygiene. And it's come to light how important that kind of technology is in combating this. And as Dan mentioned, we are certified to fight E. coli and Staphylococcus. And so we're not saying this is a cure-all for everything, but it is important to stop the spread of those bacteria and germs in the classroom or in the office space. So we don't have to deal with situations like we're dealing with right now, and to limit the exposure to that kind of thing.
Yeah, and just to go back to the application of silver ions in different types of devices. It is well proven in the industry, the silver application and the effectiveness. So we saw that those short quotes from different researchers and different organizations about the effectiveness of silver. So even though TUV Rheinland has certified us against those two main bacteria, the ability of silver ions it goes much further than that.
Yeah, definitely. And because these are public display devices, and I always go back to the classroom with this, especially in the sort of infants and primary schools, it has been in the past obviously really difficult to maintain hygiene within those classrooms. And so we have this kind of contrast between wanting to get students involved and get them up to the panel and being able to interact with it and do that simultaneously with other students. But then we've also had in the back of the minds that, you know, students or especially younger children aren't the most cleanliest creatures in the world. And having that peace of mind with that germ-resistant screen goes a long way in that education space as well.
Certainly. And then I brought up durability. And people, I suppose when we're talking about healthcare, we don't necessarily think about durability or how strong or how durable a particular device can be. But so we added in those abrasion and drop tests for the glass in particular, because we know, especially in the classroom, it can be quite a chaotic environment sometimes. Things can go flying through the air. A student might press too hard, or they might bump into a display. So we need to make sure that they're being safe, or they're being looked after, and not having these types of technology be a hindrance on their health.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, a panel being, or any technology being robust is always at a premium point, particularly in schools. I mean, a lot of schools use iPads these days, and I don't see any iPads without those shockproof casings on them. And it's because children aren't that gentle with anything. And so having a robust panel is definitely at the forefront when people are looking at technology, particularly in the classroom, for sure.
Yeah, definitely. And then I suppose lastly, that the real advancement in air quality sensors. So you mentioned, obviously we had in previous iterations of the IFPs, we had the CO2 sensor, and CO2 has been proven to hinder the learning ability of students when the concentration is too high. So we've added the temperature. So obviously, especially in Australian schools, it can get very, very hot in classrooms. And also we've got the particle matter as well.
Yeah, so you got to remember that we're a global brand, and so a lot of these sensors have to deal with different environments as well. And so in some countries where we do have a presence there are real harmful pollutants in the air in those different environments. And so we've tried to cater it as far as a global approach goes to that. And we're pretty lucky in Australia that we don't have to deal with a lot of that kind of thing. But it's really interesting just to see those studies and how that temperature control, that thermal control within the classroom really does affect the way students are able to learn their ability to focus and concentrate within that classroom as well. And so I think having those sensors and having access to that information is really interesting. I think it'll play a larger role going forward as well.
For sure. And when we're talking about particle matter, we're obviously dust comes to mind, but obviously in Australia we don't have a huge problem with dust. But I mean, something like a bushfire or some kind of other pollutants in the air can be quite detrimental in the classroom.
Yeah, I
mean, and meeting room for that
yeah,
matter.
you don't have to go back that far to when we had those crazy intense bushfires, and you'd walk outside and it would be like walking into a brick wall just because of how heavy that air was with pollutants and all the impact of those bushfires. And you can imagine being in really dense cities with high manufacturing, those kind of pollutants are something they have to deal with on a daily basis. So those sensors are really important to being able to understand what's going on in that environment.
For sure.
No questions?
I don't think we've got any questions. We must
That's
have covered it so well that no one needs to ask anything.
No doubt.
We're definitely getting better at our jobs, that's for sure. So if anyone doesn't have any questions right now, that's okay. Please follow up with us after the session if you like. Get in contact with your reseller or a BenQ representative. You can contact us directly on our email account, bqausales@benq.com. You'll all get an email follow-up from the webinar, which will have a recording of this session and also a reply button. So you can get in contact with us directly as well. If you need to ask any more questions, you'd like a quote, you'd like to find out any more information, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. And again, just a reminder, stay on the line after we end this webinar and fill out the post-webinar survey if you'd like to. So having said all that, thank you very much to everybody for joining the webinar today. And if you'd like any more information, get in contact. Otherwise, we'll see you on the next webinar.
Cool. Thanks, guys. Cheers.